Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about your stability versus mobility. And really in terms of really stiff people and really hypermobile people, or people that are always feel tight but they are still flexible. Now what happens is they may have similar problems, but those hypermobile jointed people, they are a little trickier to create stability because your joints will always move around to get the range, but it may not be ideal from a stability standpoint. Now, just to kind of give you an example, is if there's the people that just can't touch their toes, and those people, it's like they spend all their time just trying to touch their toes. So their stretching looks like, I'm trying to get to my toes. And they might, in a session, get a little further down, but every time they come back to stretch, they're just as tight as they were the last time. Now, the difference between that and a hypermobile person, or someone that's flexible but might still feel as tight as that stiff jointed, is they will just find a different way down but still be able to get down to touch their toes. So they may be missed in teaching them how to stabilize properly. So you have to get a little bit more creative. Now, in terms of stability versus mobility, what I'm talking about is stability is typically the little muscles that stabilize you around your joints. Mobility, I'm talking, they're the muscles that take you from point A to point B. Now, if you think in terms of me holding my arm here, I can hold my arm here all day without any real effort, right? Because my stabilizers are doing the work. They're the long distance runners. They can last a long time. Now, if I was to put a weight into my hand, now in comes my mobilizers, so my big muscles, so my bicep up into my shoulder, depending on how heavy it is, and now I can hold that weight, but what happens over time is my arm will give way. Now, if we think in terms of our spine and our pelvis, we don't just walk along one day and go, oh, crap, there goes my stability, I better go, or I just gave way today, I better go work on my stability. What happens is we tend to get into these bad patterns, right? So, and our stabilizers are really susceptible to shutting off. It could be because you fell on your bum really hard. Anytime, any sort of inflammation, if you don't use it, you lose it. If you're sitting all day at your desk, then you're creating tension, and a lot of times those little stabilizers are like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna go on vacation if you don't wanna use me. So what we wanna do is learn, if you're lacking in that, turn on the stability, and then your mobility will come. So it's not a matter of stretching and feeling like you need to stretch all the time. Usually that stretching is or a need to stretch is an indication that you need some stability. Now, common things that happen is your hips will get tight and it kind of pulls you into this position. And for most of us, it hurts our back. So this is not a position we want to hang out in, right? It also lifts our sit bones and sends a message to your hamstrings that oh, why are you pulling on me? So then your hamstrings will react to that, and you get this like tug of war between your hamstrings, your hip flexors, and then your low back tends to be the part that gives the most feedback. Now, in some people, they get stuck like this and they don't necessarily have a problem with it. Most of us, what we will tend to do is, okay, we just fall into that tension. So instead of using your core to stabilize you, you just use your tight hip flexors to hold you up. So we fall into this tight hip position. Now, a lot of problems happen because of that. So you tend to lose glute function. There's a chain reaction, which I'm not gonna get into all the details, but more or less what our ideal situation. So just because our mobilizers are taking over for our stabilizers, that doesn't make those big muscles all of a sudden have endurance. So what they start to do is they learn to work in a shortened position to protect themselves. So you'll get tight hamstrings, tight hip flexors, tight low back, and you get this tug of war of tension. Now that tension is serving you because you no longer have the stability. So a lot of times when we feel really tight and we have the need to stretch, well, you don't have the stability supporting you anymore. Your body's trying to create tension to create some stability, and now you've taken that away, and now you're very vulnerable to injury. So I'm not saying that stretching is bad, but you need to be selective in what you're stretching and making sure that you're backing it up with some sort of stability exercise, because we need to have stability to move. And if you are weak in your stabilizers, you've taken away the tension that your body's naturally creating to try to create stability. You're very, like, you're kind of flopping in the wind. So more or less, the idea behind this is anytime you stretch, there should always be a strengthening aspect.